I didn't get to sing on my last video. I didn't get to sing, I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. I'm recording this, by the way.
Welcome to Horror Month. You are all my maniacs now.
It is October 30th, Halloween Eve, and this day could even be more scarier than Halloween because the anticipation. All the ghosts and the monsters and everything is hiding in those closets waiting to burst out and come up out of your underneath your bed. But, you know, don't go looking for them tonight because they're there. They're just waiting to come out.
All the ghouls and the creeps and the undead are coming back to life, and they're coming up and out of the graves. And where am I going with this?
Reverend, he was torn apart!
I don't know. But we have yet another Stephen King adaptation for you tonight, and I couldn't think of a better film to bring you than
Silver Bullet, the last glimmering hope.
Because this is actually made from a company called Umbrella, and it's a Australian company, but these are region free, so you can actually buy them even though they come from Australia and watch them on any player. And this was the first one of theirs I ever bought, so I kind of was curious as to see what the disc was all about. So here you go.
And it's kind of weird that they haven't actually made this as a US release yet. So who knows, maybe Scream Factory or Vestron or somebody will get a hold of this and actually do release a US version of it.
This is spectacular. This is, even if they released a US version of it, I don't think they're going to make it look any better or sound any better. The quality of this company has super impressed me. The picture quality is crystal clear. I mean, it looks like it was made yesterday. It's an amazing quality transfer of this movie. But first, I want to say that this came from a Stephen King book, which I got right here. Now, this is the original book, the book that I pulled off the shelf in whatever year this came out. So this is the first copy of this thing. And it's a real short, it's like a graphic novel almost, because Bernie Wrightson does the artwork in here, and it's spectacular. The artwork in this thing is incredible. But yeah, he released this, and then they ended up making Silver Bullet from it. So that's where it actually came from, was a cycle.
And I used to own that at one point, and I have no idea where it went. I don't know if I got rid of it. I don't know if somebody stole it from me. I have no idea, but it went the way of Jaws the Revenge.
He was torn apart!
I was about to say, the person probably has your Jaws book there, and right next to it is Cycle the Werewolf. Right next to that is something else that you're missing. They probably have a whole bookshelf of your books at home somewhere.
Somewhere. Somebody's hoarding all this stuff somewhere.
So I saw this when I was a kid. It came out, I don't know, was it in the 80s or the 90s? Probably the 80s this thing came out.
It was the 80s, Dave. 1985, as a matter of fact.
I went to the show to go see it, and all those years ago, I loved it because they don't really make, like today, they don't really make werewolf movies anymore. I mean, they're just non-existent. I'm sure they will come back around like they always do. You know, you'll have the whole vampire, which was stupid Twilight, which I'm not even going to consider a vampire, you know, anything because it was terrible.
They had werewolves in that too, Dave.
Yeah, but it was not an actual werewolf, and it's not the traditional werewolf that's in these movies. I'm talking something that's not watered down and made stupid. I'm talking about a real horror film. I can't even tell you the last one they actually made. I don't even remember.
They remade Universal's The Werewolf, the Wolfman. It wasn't that great of a remake, but that was the last real Wolfman werewolf movie. That was it.
And it's a shame because I love werewolf films. I think they're great. And they just don't make them anymore. It's like sort of like westerns. They just kind of went the way of the western. You know, it's like, let's bring in serial killers. But we're here to talk about Silver Bullet. Okay, so again, I saw this when I was a kid. after I read Cycle of the Werewolf, and it's very little like Cycle of the Werewolf. It doesn't follow it too well. There's some stuff in there that's the same, but not really. But I love this movie. And all these years later, I went looking for it for Horror Month. I thought, well, I wonder if any studios ever re-released this. And then I found out, actually, a friend, one of the Maniacs on here, Jason, told me about it. And he says, oh yeah, there's this company called Umbrella, and they release really good releases. And I was like, oh, all right. So ended up getting it from Umbrella. Could not have been more impressed with it. Just phenomenal. Love the transfer, love the sound. I thought it was fantastic.
I have never seen this movie. I had never watched the movie. Not that I didn't want to. Not that, obviously it was 1985. I was probably 14 years old when this thing came out. So trying to get my parents to take me to a horror film was all but almost impossible. So I never got the chance to go and see this at the movies. But I did have Cycle of the Werewolf. I did have the book at one point. Other than that, I knew nothing about this film, other than I knew who was in it. I knew Corey Haim was in it. I knew Gary Busey was in it. I knew the actors that were in it, but the thing I ever really saw of it was like images from Fangoria, or like maybe little bits and clips here and there. But the entire film, I've never actually watched it until now, until getting this Blu-ray. I've never seen it, and I have to say, like you said, I was really impressed with the clarity of the film, the sound. That was really impressive to me. But can I compare it to anything? No, not really.
So this movie starred Corey Haim, Gary Busey, and Everett McGill. Is that his last name? Yeah, McGill.
And Terry O'Quinn was also in this. He was the stepfather in the Stepfather movies.
Oh yeah, okay. Which again, I would love to watch, and I'm waiting for somebody to release those. Scream Factory, Arrow, somebody. So this film, Corey Haim, I guess at that point was a big actor. He was sort of like the what's the other guy? I can't. Corey Feldman.
Actually, he wasn't that big of an actor at this point.
Well, this is it's kind of his launching pad, though. I mean, he became pretty big right after this. And I was never really a big fan of Gary Busey, to tell you the truth. He just seems to me like this loud, obnoxious drunk that would like stumble into the set and like, hey, I'm here, everybody, let's get filmed. You know, it just seems that way to me. But he was great in this film. All the actors in this movie were great, to tell you the truth. Everybody in this movie was fantastic.
You realize why he was so good in this role. Because he's a loud, obnoxious drunk, and that's who the role is.
Holy, have Jesus found me.
Yeah, he was great in this movie. I really liked him. I actually liked him as the character and liked him as the actor. So he was really good in this film. So was Corey Haim, and so was everybody. Everybody in this film was great. And the directing in this film was outstanding. And the fact, too, that there was a voiceover here, so it almost felt like the Stand By Me of horror films when you're watching this.
But Gary Busey, he actually blew up as well after this, because after this movie, it wasn't too long after this that he did Lethal Weapon. And that's where he really got known, he was the badass in Lethal Weapon. And then eventually he went on to make like Point Break and all of those action films, and I always enjoyed him in those movies. I wouldn't say I necessarily enjoy him as a person because I've never met him, but I mean, yeah, he's a nutball, but he was also on a lot of drugs. But I never minded that. I mean, as far as his movie roles go, I thought he was an okay actor. And you talk about Corey Haim in here, and I have to say, I was never all that impressed with Corey Haim. I never thought of him as that great of an actor, but he was really, really good in this, and a lot of his roles he was really good in. But I would never say his acting ever blew me away, but to see how he also ended up is like, it's really sad, because so even when we get to the extras in this, they talk about Corey Haim and how there's people in here that actually said, well, I never kept up with him after this movie. And it's sad because if they had, his life may have turned out a lot differently than what it did.
So this is a perfect movie for October. It's a perfect film to even watch on Halloween because it has atmosphere, and you got the fog, and then you also have the werewolf in the film. And the werewolf in the movie was really cool for the fact that he didn't care who he killed. I mean, he killed pregnant people, he killed kids, he killed when he went out, he just killed everybody. He didn't really pick and choose, you know. And that was kind of even shocking back then for him to go up into this woman's bedroom and kill her because she was pregnant. I mean, I don't want to give any plot points away, but it was interesting to see back then. And the other thing I had totally forgotten about was the fact that they named the movie Silver Bullet not because of the werewolf, is because Corey Haim's character was in a wheelchair that Gary Busey made for him. It's like this motorized wheelchair. It was called the Silver Bullet. And I thought that was so cool that they did that. And it kind of like flipped it when you're watching. You're like, oh, that's why it's called Silver Bullet, not because of the werewolf.
But of course, silver bullets are synonymous with werewolves. So that's also why it's named Silver Bullet.
And now you have the other actor here, Everett McGill, who was in a show that Vince never watched, which was one of the greatest television shows of all time, Twin Peaks. And he actually was in the new Twin Peaks as well. And he was a great actor in this as well. Now, the entire story here, I keep saying, is so well done, so well written, and it's just creepy, and it really is. It's one of those small town murder mysteries of something going out killing things, and the kid knows what it is, and he's trying to convince the adults what it is, and it's just a great film. And it's still scary. It really is. It's still scary, and it's not like a blood fest. I mean, there's some blood in it, but I don't think there's any nudity in it or anything like that. So yeah, your kids can watch this on Halloween, and it would probably scare the crap out of them. And that's what Halloween's supposed to do.
Yeah, I liked a lot of the effects in here. Some of them were obvious effects, and I mean, you could kind of look at them and go, okay, well, that's obviously a puppet, or that's obviously rubber, or that's obviously, you know, made out of, you know, animatronic of some sort. Actually, they came out well, if we're considering that this was 1985, and all of these are practical effects. Everything came out pretty damn good, I would say. I actually enjoyed a lot of the effects that they did in this movie.
Yeah, and I think they had a problem with the werewolf. I didn't watch all the extras on here, but some of the extras I did watch, they talked about they didn't have a werewolf suit, and they were going to have to build one, and then that Everett didn't want to get into a werewolf suit. He thought it was going to be somebody else, or he thought it was going to be a puppet. Then he ended up having to get into it, and he didn't want to be it. So the actual main character here, they had a lot of problem with.
So overall, seeing this movie for the very first time, I think it was a good film. I think it was, it was decent. I liked the acting. I liked the special effects. Did it blow me away necessarily? No, not really. But if I had seen this way back then, in being the teenager I was and into horror films and watching it way back then, I think I would have been blown away by it then. But I would have been, yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. Stephen King is the master. Oh, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was when I watched this the second time. It holds up perfectly. It's still an outstanding movie. Did it blow me away? Yes, it absolutely did. Did it blow my wife away? Yes, it absolutely did. I loved this movie back then, and I thought it was going to be a cheese fest watching it again. Absolutely not. This is a great, great horror film.
He ripped her apart, Reverend!
And I am giving this thing the Golden Machete. I think it's a classic. I think it's one of the most classic werewolf movies that most people have never heard of.
Well, it's a great werewolf movie. It is a good, great werewolf movie. You know, it's fun, and it's like I said, the effects are good. The acting's decent. It's nothing outstanding, but it's decent, and I don't know. I did enjoy it, but it didn't. Like I said, if I had seen it when I was a kid, I probably would have been a lot more blown away about it than I am now watching it, 30 years later? So I would give Stephen King's Silver Bullet a 5 out of 5.
I think this is up there with American Werewolf in London. I think it's up there with The Howling. I think it's up there with all the werewolf classics back in the day, when they actually still made werewolf movies. Now, this actually has extras on it, and I did not get a chance to watch hardly any of them. So I think Vince watched them all, so take it away, Vince.
Okay, of course, the first extra on this Blu-ray disc is an audio commentary by the director Daniel Attias, or Attias, I think it is. Daniel Attias. I think that's how they say it. This was one of the extras on this thing that I was completely not impressed with. I thought it was boring. I thought it was just terrible to listen to this guy. He just drones on and on and on about things. And I wasn't impressed with him at all doing this commentary. It was actually putting me to sleep. It's kind of like, it's not actually an audio commentary, it's a little bit like an interview. It's like somebody actually conducting an interview and he's just kind of answering things. And it's just, it was just boring and I didn't like it at all. The next extra on this disc is called Dino's Angel Takes on Lycanthropy. And this was an interview with Martha De Laurentiis, who is the wife of Dino De Laurentiis. Go figure. So she remembers Silver Bullet, and she talks about her career. And I kind of like the way they did this, because it was kind of like what they did with Return of the Living Dead and Dan O'Bannon. Is they put questions on the screen for each section, and she answered those questions in depth. So the first part of it, she talks about her career and how she started out and where she met Dino De Laurentiis and when they got married and some of the movies that she worked on. She worked on a lot of these movies as the bookkeeper or the accountant. So she actually worked on the horror movies Wolfen and Amityville 2: The Possession, as well as Amityville 3D. So those two Amityville movies, she worked on those as well. It was actually interesting to hear her talk. I will say that. She was a lot more interesting than what the director was with the audio commentary. So it was pretty cool. One of the things she talks about is how Don Coscarelli, I think that's how you say his name, was originally supposed to direct this film. He was the director from Phantasm, but a lot of the reports said he got upset with it and walked off the set and said it was a piece of crap and all this kind of thing. And she's on here saying he did none of that. He didn't do any of that. They didn't come to an agreement. He had different views about how they should do the werewolf, and Dino De Laurentiis didn't agree with that, so they eventually just parted ways, and they're still friends, and they have, there's no animosity between any of these people, but at the time, that's what they were trying to make out. But overall, it was a good interview. It was decent, and I actually enjoyed it. It was alright. So the next thing on here, they do an audio interview with the man who made the musical score for this movie, Jay Chataway. And actually, this ends up being an interview audio commentary. So when you click on it, it actually goes back to the movie with an audio commentary by the guy who made the score. And this actually was a better audio commentary than the one with the director. It was actually a little more interesting because you had a guy sitting there interviewing him and actually asking him questions about the music and everything. And yeah, of course he goes into his work and his work history and how, who he's worked with and all that kind of thing. But after that, it gets into the movie, and they actually isolate the score in some places to where you're just listening to the music and that's it. So it was interesting. I will give it that. The next extra is called The Wolf Within. and this is with Everett McGill. And this is the one where he's sitting there, it's just him. So he's sitting there talking about his involvement in the movie and where he got auditioned and how he got auditioned, how he got the part and all of this stuff. And he even goes and talks about Corey Haim. And this is what I was saying in the review, is he's one of those guys, including Martha De Laurentiis, actually said, oh, Corey Haim was fantastic, it was great to work with him. Actually, he said Corey Haim was kind of an asshole.
Yeah, I did watch this interview, and that's exactly, he didn't say he was great to work with, he said he was difficult to work with. He said he basically had temper tantrums during the filming, he wanted stuff his way, he would walk off, he was a real, like you said, a real a-hole during this production, which I was like, well, I guess I could see that.
But then later on, after he says that, he said eventually, I guess they did finally, you know, kind of talk together and everything, but once again, like Martha De Laurentiis, he also says, I've never kept up with him after that. After this movie, they never ever talked to him. They never did anything with him or nothing. So, like I said, it's really kind of sad, because maybe if they did, maybe if they had more involvement in his life, Corey Haim wouldn't have ended up the way he did.
And I found it was interesting that he actually talked about Gary Busey, about how he was loud, he actually was drinking, so he's like, well, the character you see on the screen is the character he is in real life, which I can totally see that. I completely see that what you see on the screen, if you're hanging out with Gary Busey, that's the way he's going to be.
So the next extra is called Full Moon Fever. And this is pretty much the last interview that's on this disc. After this is pretty much just TV spots, a radio spot, the theatrical trailer, a still gallery. So this is like the last interview that's on here, and it's with the guys who did the special effects. And like I said in the review, the special effects were decent. They were, you know, they were one of the better parts of the movie. And these guys talk about how they did them all and how they created them, and it's literally that. And they're actually kind of funny. I mean, they're really kind of, the one guy is really kind of strange, and he kind of actually reminded me of, when we did our Nightmare on Elm Street reviews, he reminded me of the guy that was in, I believe, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, that was the screenwriter or something for Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or 3 or something, with the ear hair. Okay, this guy doesn't have any ear hair, but he's bald and he has glasses, and it kind of reminded me of that guy, and just his mannerisms and the way he acted. It was kind of strange. But overall, it wasn't a bad interview, and it was actually one of the more entertaining interviews on this disc. So, with all that done and all that said, this is Horror Month 2018. This is October 30th. We're almost there, people. We're almost there to Halloween. So, get ready, because it's coming. It's coming. Halloween is coming.
Holy, Jesus found me.
To see it all, you have to subscribe. Of course, you have to subscribe. That's the thing I've been saying all freaking month. Just do it. Just get it over with. Subscribe to us. Leave comments in the feedback, or leave feedbacks in the comments, or...
He was torn apart!
And we'll be back tomorrow night for the final review of Horror Month 2018. That's right. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.